It's the end of the year, which is a great time for reflection as someone who covers business, finance, and the economy mainly from America. It looks like we have a lot to be grateful for. The USA is the largest economy in the world, and over the last 5 years, it's just pulled ahead of its only real rival, China, which has not been having a great time. Per person, that means that the only countries in the world with higher outputs are either oil states, tax havens, or tax haven oil states. Unemployment is low, inflation is supposedly under control, interest rates are coming down, and markets are booming. But despite all of this, general consumer confidence is still around all-time lows. I am 100% guilty of being a little bit of a gloomy goose as well. This year, the closest thing to a good news story I covered was a celebration that at least we weren't Canada. So if everything is so great, why the f are Americans always so pessimistic?
Americans tend to be a little bit less optimistic about how the economy is doing, and in particular about the job market.
How's the economy for you?
It's horrible.
It's bad enough for a lot of people.
I think everyone could be doing a little bit better right now.
Politicians just talking about how the economy is so great. I just want to scream from the rooftops. Then how come no one can find a job?
Pessimism is profitable. Humans who paid more attention to potential threats were more likely to pass down their genes. And so now it's just human nature to fixate on bad news over good news. Media outlets know this, politicians know this, advertisers know this, and even YouTubers know this. There is a good reason why every influencer thumbnail ever is someone doing the shocked Pikachu face in front of a burning stock market graph. And that's because it works. As I mentioned earlier, I am guilty of this too. Commenters regularly say that they are back for their weekly dose of depression, which always gives the team and I a good laugh. But the truth is, we try and cover good news stories as well, and there have actually been a lot of them this year. The IRS rolling out effective tax policies to make sure wealthy asset owners are paying their fair share, rules limiting the shady practices of realtors, the crackdown on price-fixing algorithms, and the attempted banning of non-compete agreements. The only thing is, those videos just don't get as many views as the ones about less positive subjects. So even if you are subscribed, you probably just naturally see less good news than bad news. Although if you are not subscribed and you are feeling a little bit too optimistic about the new year, you know what to do. Alright, shameless plug over. This channel makes more than enough money to make sure everybody working here gets paid a good wage. And not to flex that YouTube money or anything, but there is even enough left over to cover my rent on a 1-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles. So we are not going to stop making positive videos just because they don't do as well. But if you found yourself running a media organization with shareholders to answer to, you might see why it's easier to turn on the doom faucets. It can also be an effective marketing tactic. Most of the news you watch, including here on YouTube, is funded primarily by advertisers. Now you might think people who are worried about the economy and their financial future would make worse customers because they would be trying to save as much money as they can for that rainy day. But that's not always true. The Nobel Prize-winning economist Daniel Kahneman first popularized the idea of irrational loss aversion by conducting studies that challenged the idea that people always make logical decisions. He and other researchers ran tests like one where they gave participants $1,000 to play a game and then offered them a 50% chance of doubling that money or a 100% chance of just getting an extra $500. Most people chose to take the risk on doubling their money. However, when people were offered a 50% chance of losing their full $1,000 or a 100% chance of just losing $500, most chose to not risk it and just take the guaranteed $500. The point was that people tend to be risk-seeking when maximizing gains, but risk-averse when minimizing loss. So bad news is a really good way to sell things like medications, insurance, big safe cars, and political campaigns. You know, basically every ad you see if you are brave enough to turn on cable news. Now, to all of you watching from not America land, you are not immune to the effects of human nature. The only difference is, American news normally focuses almost exclusively on America, where news from your own country will include a healthier blend of domestic and foreign affairs. Now, the reasons for that are, a lot of Americans don't realize that there are other countries that aren't America, and foreign correspondence is expensive. If you are running a nice state-funded news outlet like the BBC or PBS, you can use those sweet taxpayer dollars to pay for people to report on foreign issues. Here in the United States of shareholder value, it's just not a good investment for profit-driven media. So Americans only ever hear about how bad things are in America, with maybe the occasional piece about where we are sending military equipment this week. Now, before this devolves into a rant about the state of modern journalism, this is far from the biggest problem. And while the media is definitely guilty of making us feel worried about the things that we shouldn't be, they are just as bad at ignoring the things that we should be. So it's time to learn how money works to find out how America got so rich and miserable. This week's video is sponsored by Brilliant. Brilliant is an interactive learning platform that helps you master complex subjects through hands-on problem solving. With thousands of lessons across math, data analysis, programming, and AI, Brilliant's unique approach makes learning not only more engaging, but also 6 times more effective than traditional video lectures. I've been diving into their creative coding course, and it's incredible how quickly I've been able to build my problem-solving skills by writing real programs. The interactive lessons are fun and super effective. And the best part, you can learn anytime, anywhere, whether you're on your computer, phone, or tablet. Brilliant fits right into your schedule, making it easy to build a daily learning habit. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for 30 days, head over to brilliant.org/howmoneyworks. Plus, you'll get 20% off an annual premium subscription if you decide to continue. A lot of people are very angry about being told how good they have it when they are financially struggling. GDP per capita may be up, but that measures how much stuff the average person makes. It doesn't measure how much they were paid for making that stuff. Worker productivity is up, but median household incomes adjusted for inflation are still behind where they were in 2019. Put another way, the benefits of all our economic success are going mainly to benefit shareholders. Most major European countries also had stagnant household incomes, but it makes a little bit more sense for them because their GDP per capita over the last 10 years has also been stagnant. The people that have actually felt this the most in Europe are investors. America's S&P 500 index has more than tripled in the last 10 years, in the same time that Europe's EU 50 has only gone up by 60%. For a majority of Americans, though, that just doesn't really matter. Share ownership is highly concentrated amongst very wealthy people, and the vast majority of Americans get most of their money from exchanging their labor for a salary. For a lot of people, the stock market doing so well has actually been a bad thing, because they have been left further behind by asset owners who they might have to compete with for purchases like a house. Someone whose portfolio has tripled in the last 10 years and is trying to buy their 10th investment property is going to find it much easier than the worker who is trying to save for a down payment on a stagnant income. We are also working much longer hours for the privilege. Germany is the largest comparable economy to America. And while we do, on average, have higher incomes, we also work more than 400 extra hours a year, or about 11 full working weeks. But once again, at least we aren't Canada. For all of this extra work and paper wealth, our actual quality of life as measured by the Human Development Index is now lower than Germany. They might be the sick man of Europe, but at least they get time off to rest. So unless you are absolutely committed to maximizing shareholder value, it's understandable to feel a little bit left behind.
How could you say that? How could you say that knowing that at 5:30 on a Thursday night, I need to be maximizing shareholder value?
America also kind of cheats a little bit. We are more productive than workers in Europe, but we haven't been pulling ahead of them quite as quickly as the charts like this would make you believe. Since the global financial crisis, the value of the euro, as well as other major currencies like the yen, the Canadian dollar, and the Australian dollar-do have all fallen against the American dollar because people want to hold on to it as a financial reserve. This means that even though we have had higher inflation than places like Europe and Japan, our GDP per capita looks better because it's been adjusted to a currency that has appreciated over time. But unless you are booking a trip to Europe or buying a whole lot of imported goods, this doesn't actually improve your life that much. My friend Yuri Shasfort, who runs the YouTube channel Money and Macro, made a great video on this a few months ago. He is clearly a godless, freedom-hating European, so his insights from their perspective are really interesting. Oh, and he is also a PhD economist, so he does a much better job of explaining the purchasing power parity problem than I did. Anyway, Europe being slightly more egalitarian than America is probably not exactly shocking to you, but at least rich Americans should be feeling optimistic, right? Well, sort of. Despite what the platitudes might tell you, money does indeed buy happiness. A survey of over 33,000 participants found that ultra-rich people were on average much happier than middle-income people, who were themselves much happier than people on a low income. But the happiest people of all were wealthy people from more equal countries like those in Scandinavia. Collecting and analyzing hard data on something as abstract as happiness is really hard, but a study published by Berkeley theorized that trust in fellow citizens and the government was the biggest contributor to that happiness. If a millionaire in Finland gets sick, they don't really have to worry about anything other than getting healthy again. Even a millionaire in America can spend a significant amount of that wealth on medical care. It's hard to enjoy your wealth when you're living in fear that it could be taken away from you at any moment. This extends through the ultra-wealthy as well. Ironically, billionaires are actually more common and more popular in Sweden than they are in America, so they have less concerns over punitive government actions. Now, while these big picture theories are all very interesting, here is what it actually means for you. This really matters because people who are pessimistic about the future are less likely to invest or acquire new skills or do anything that could actually help them get into a situation they could be more optimistic about. Collectively, you may have heard of the term vibecession, which has come to mean that even though economic figures look really good, people don't feel it, which lowers consumer confidence, which can cause a real recession. It can also stop people from actually going out and actually working to make things better. Go and watch my video on why nobody wants to work anymore to find out if the standard complaint of corporate executives actually has any merit. This is the last video of this year, so I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for watching, and for sticking around every week, depressing or not, to keep on learning how money works.